Welcome to Love Where You Live, a podcast where we have conversations about why it's awesome to live in Boulder County. Sometimes we talk about the drawbacks. We'll see. Today, though, I have a guest who just traveled about a mile to get here, a real close neighbor of mine and someone I've known now for 26 years. It's amazing. I'm going to say, if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm going to give you the full wind up. Today, I'm sitting with the only person that we can recall, she and I can recall together, that has in the same year, within a month span, represented a top 5 finish in the Olympics and a top 5 finish in the Ironman World Championships in Kona. Pretty good feat. So for those of you that are guessing or playing along, you can guess. But the other thing that's amazing about this guest is she's got just a broad background. I'm sitting with, and I'll intro now, and then I'll grab the mic right back. But I'm sitting with Joanna Zeiger. Joanna, first off, thank you so much for being here.
It was not an easy task, but I am very happy to be here. I managed to get a flat tire in that 1 mile distance from my house to your house. But I'm very happy to be here.
That's true. And folks, a flat tire in her vehicle too. It was not a bike. It was not what you're thinking, just coming off that Ironman intro. But thank you. I know it's been tough, and we appreciate you overcoming stuff to be with us. And so I'm excited. I know the guests that are listening, or the viewers or listeners, whatever they are going to love this. I'm going to give a quick overview, like I said, from what I know off the top of my head. You were born in Baltimore, but then you were raised in San Diego, and then you went to school. There's a lot you're going to fill in here, but you went to school, I think, and swam for Brown. I came into the fold. You were just getting a PhD in genetic epidemiology, which not only can I not say, but I don't understand. So
well, in between there, I did a stint at Northwestern. To get my master's in genetic counseling.
In genetic counseling. So I knew she'd fill it in, and we're already there. And this is, but like a really cool background I want to talk about. But then you were a swimmer that transitioned, high-level swimmer, and you transitioned to high-level triathlon. Folks, I mentioned that one stat, but she's also a 70.3 world champion, 4th in the Olympics, 5th and 6th in Kona, if I'm not wrong.
I'm in top 10 4 times.
And top 10 4 times. So those are the 2 best finishes. And then, and one was as an age grouper.
Correct.
We're going to go into that. But also Olympic trials for the marathon, Olympic trials for swimming. Just a really wide range, big body of work from the academics to the athletics. And you live here in Boulder now. So that's my 2-time Ironman winner as well. I don't think I threw that in, but a huge just resume. And so but then I met you I think the first time I met you, we were at a bar in Baltimore having drinks and having fun and dancing. And that was sort of off season for a triathlete. But just a really well-rounded individual. So I'm tickled to introduce you to folks that don't know you as that. And there's so much more. So, can we dive in and start from the beginning?
Wherever you want to start.
Okay, for real?
I was born May 4th, 1970.
There you go, May 4th.
That is the beginning. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. And I'm going to look at my watch and make sure we keep on track. So just a few minutes before the hour. So May 4th, yeah, that's a great day. More famous than Cinco de Mayo. Really more important because May the 4th is Joanna's birthday. So, all right. Now, where did you? Oh, you were born in Baltimore. That was correct. But do you have memories of that, or were you right away?
No, we moved when I was young. My dad was doing his internship at Johns Hopkins.
Gotcha.
And so that was where I was born. We moved around a little bit, but my dad did his residency in Boston.
Okay.
And both my parents are from the East Coast, but they really dislike the weather.
Gotcha.
And were ready for a major change. And so they went from Boston to San Diego.
Okay.
So I spent my formative years in San Diego.
Okay. So really, that's kind of home. That's a hometown, maybe.
I do consider San Diego my hometown. My parents did move up to LA in the middle of the pandemic. That's where my sister is.
Okay.
I was very upset because I love San Diego and LA not so much.
Yeah, fair.
And I didn't even get to say goodbye to my childhood house, which was very difficult. But San Diego's still in my heart. I went there over the summer for a reunion and to see some friends.
Okay.
I have a service dog. Her name is Lola. I brought Lola with me. And I remember as we're flying into San Diego, and if you've ever flown into San Diego, it's one of the craziest airports because you fly right over downtown.
Sure.
And it feels like you're going to just fly into these buildings because you're just coming in. It's crazy. but beautiful. And I remember looking down, seeing downtown, and seeing the Coronado Bridge and the bay, and I just started to cry. And I said to Lola, Lola, we're home. So yes,
nice.
it still has
still home. Yeah.
Even though I've been in Boulder since 2003.
Yeah,
I just have an affinity for San Diego.
I love that, and that ties into kind of how our podcast rolls. Like we talk about where you came from and sort of that fondness. I love San Diego too, and you know it really well. But it's a beautiful area. You grew up there. Tell us a little bit what it was like being, I know you have a sister, but like tell me about siblings, parent life, sports, school. What was it like growing up in San Diego?
Well, San Diego has drastically changed,
Sure.
as have most places, but San Diego in particular, because when we moved there in 1976, it was just, it was like this little sleepy town of surfers and hippies, and it was kind of like LA's little stepsister.
Okay.
It just there wasn't a lot of culture. There wasn't a lot there.
Interesting.
But still loved it.
Sure.
And then sometime in high school, they put in downtown was not a place people went. It wasn't safe, and it just there was just no reason to go there. But then they put in this huge mall called Horton Plaza, which everyone said was going to fail. But that mall basically revitalized the whole downtown area, and there's Seaport Village, and now it's completely different. We've got the stadium and the convention center, and so a lot has changed. But when I was growing up, very different from what it is now.
Yeah.
But the basic elements are still there.
Okay.
And that's what I am drawn to.
So what was it like, though? I mean, just paint a little picture. We can cut to like you're super athletic, you're an Olympian, you're an Ironman champion, you're an incredible badass. So if we were to take that, where did that start? Were you a soccer player? What drew you in for athletics early?
Well, my first sport was swimming.
It was.
I didn't dabble in
Gotcha.
any other sports. I don't think I have the eye-hand coordination for it anyway. And let's be honest, a lot of times I'm not really a team player.
There you go.
I like individual sports. I can work on a team. I mean, all of my research is collaborative. But when it comes to sports, I'm not so much a team player.
I like it.
All right. I got to be honest. I know it sounds terrible.
No.
But I got into swimming. We belonged to a swim club, and they had a swim team there. And the first time I tried out, I'd taken some lessons. And the first time I tried out, they turned me away and said that I needed more swim lessons.
Okay.
So I was a late bloomer. So I did join the swim team at the age of 7, and I was terrible.
Yeah.
I have this picture that I love to show when I give like motivational talks.
Yeah.
And it's me at one of my very first swim meets, and I'm swimming the 50-meter butterfly. That's a long way for
That's huge.
It's a long way for a little kid.
Huge.
And I'm in this picture, and I can barely get my arms out of the water. I look like a little tadpole.
Okay.
And back in the day, we had these like ugly lycra caps, and
Sure.
it's the most hilarious picture. Like you would look at that picture and say that person will never be a good swimmer.
Yes, you're like very humble beginning. Okay, so send me that, by the way. I'd love to see that.
I will find it for you. It's quite remarkable.
It's good. So you did that. When did you find the knack? So I mean, you're terrible right away, but when did you find the knack?
I stuck with it for a long time, even though I was teased a lot for being slow.
Okay.
I experienced anti-Semitism on my swim team, which was very difficult. There were a lot of hurdles to overcome. I had some injuries. I didn't know back then. I knew I was hypermobile back then, but I didn't know that I had a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So many of you probably watched swimming in the Olympics, and they talked about some of the swimmers being double jointed.
Sure.
Probably they have some kind of connective tissue disorder, whether it's just general hypermobility syndrome or Ehlers-Danlos like I have. But that made me a great swimmer because I was so hyper flexible. My shoulders, they could do anything. And anybody that saw me swim, I always swim with straight arms with a very, very fast turnover.
I've seen it
I'm
many
a
times.
High voltage swimmer. But all of that comes from this connective tissue disorder that I have.
Interesting.
And so I was injured a lot. But I didn't really find my stride in swimming until maybe I was 14, which is a pretty late bloomer.
Sure.
I stuck with it. I went to swim meets. I'd get lapped in the longer events. But once the events got longer, that was better for me. I am no sprinter.
Sure.
I just never could sprint.
Yeah.
I worked on it very hard. That's just not my gig. I'm more of a diesel engine.
Yes.
So once the events got longer, and I really decided that swimming was my thing and that I wanted to get better at it and put my head down. And my goal in high school was to qualify for the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
And I did in 1988 in the 200 breaststroke and the 400 IM.
Wow.
So I went off to the Olympic trials right before I went to college.
Okay.
And I did some in college.
Yes. Jeez. And of course the 400 IM. I mean, that's like, come on. The hardest of, I mean, seriously, probably the hardest event.
It is. It is a very hard event, and I was a horrendous backstroker.
Okay.
I was so slow in the backstroke that a lot of times I've come off the wall last.
Okay.
But I had a killer breaststroke.
Had a great breaststroke.
And so I was
nice.
I was really a back half IMer.
Back half. That's
so
fascinating.
I'd hit the wall, and it would look like I was in deep trouble. But then the breaststroke leg would come along, and most people aren't very good. A lot of IMers are not good breaststrokers.
Correct.
Nowadays, everybody's well-rounded. They don't really have weak strokes. But back in those days, people were more specialists.
For sure. And so, okay, so you're 17-ish going to the Olympic trials? Sound about right?
I was 18. I had just turned 18.
So you're just a fresh 18 Olympic trials. Good experience for you?
It was amazing. It opened my eyes. I mean, I'd been to junior and senior nationals, so I'd been at that high-level competition.
Yeah.
But nothing is like the Olympic trials.
No.
You know, when you talk about the agony of defeat.
Sure.
I mean, there is obviously the thrill of victory, but the agony of defeat at Olympic trials is massive.
Okay.
And there was one swimmer there, Michelle Griglione. I think she got third in like 4 events, and they only take the top 2. And it was just heartbreaking. And every Olympics always has a story of somebody that just misses, and she was the story of that year. But it was very illuminating and motivating for me to see such high-level swimmers doing what they do. It really was a great time to go right before college. It just gave me some extra motivation.
For sure. And so you picked Brown, and you're heading in there. I have to imagine the competition level became a little bit easier all of a sudden, right? You're the first you're at the Olympic trials, and then you go. I mean, not that it's high level, but right, the Olympic trials is a pinnacle.
Oh yeah,
it's harder to qualify, right? So then you come down, and you're at Brown. Was it going well? Did you feel like that experience there at the trials really gave you extra oomph, extra confidence, or how did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, I felt that it did give me, I don't know if it gave me extra confidence, but it gave me motivation to see to see the limits of what people could do.
Fantastic.
And one of my goals always as an athlete, obviously I love competition, but more important to me was what are my physical limits and how can I achieve those or even maybe get ahead of what that is? Because we all have a limit.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I did a lot of marathoning, and I was never going to be a sub 2:30 marathoner. Maybe if that had been where I started, but when I got into the game, that was not possible for me. Right. So, you have to set goals that are feasible. And so I just wanted to get the most out of myself. And going to the trials was eye-opening in the fact that, wow, people are really, really fast and they can do really amazing things. How
cool is that? I love that you shared that. That's a perspective I haven't heard. I haven't maybe spoken to a lot of Olympic trials participants, but that's so cool. And now I'm trying to go, okay, so you're in Providence, Rhode Island. Is that where Brown is?
Yes.
You looked at me like I was okay. I got to make sure.
In Providence.
So you're in Providence, and you're finishing up. Did you have a good college? Was it good? Were you loving it? Was it hard? Did you? I mean,
academically, it was very hard. Yeah, but also amazing. I took a lot of really interesting classes that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. Yeah. Cool. Swimming wise, it was much easier than what I'd come from in high school because my high school coach was such a ball buster. Right. He just, I mean, he had a temper. He'd throw clipboards and chairs.
Proper 80s swim coach out of California.
Totally. And he actually was an Olympic trial swimmer himself. He was 8th in Olympic trials. You would never know that by looking at him. He was so out of shape.
Sure.
But man, he pushed us hard. I would do 400 IM repeats in the pool, and the tears would just literally fill up my goggles because my arms would be so tired. I'd be like, I don't know if I can lift my arms again.
Oh, my word.
So going off to college was actually a break.
Okay. I believe that. And it's also cool to hear because, like I said, I intersected with your story in 1999, really personally. But so ultimately, to hear some backstory to me, it explains a lot. I mean, your work ethic was always unmatched. So let's say, and then you get to Chicago, right? Northwestern, you're moving on. Let's get you down the road here. I want to find our way to some of the, to Boulder County and whatnot. But so Chicago, a couple years there.
Yeah. So I started doing triathlon while I was in Providence.
Good to know.
Okay. And I hated running.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe how much I turned out to love it, but it's a hard transition. Sure. I didn't run prior to,
That's what you said, yeah.
And so running was difficult, but then I found the love for it and did my first triathlon in Rhode Island, and I knew that was my new sport.
Is that right? Still in college?
No,
Or
I stayed an extra year in Providence
Okay.
to take some prereqs for my master's.
Perfect.
And I went off to Chicago. I was there for about a year and a half getting my master's.
Okay.
Did some triathlons, did the famous, what was then called the Mrs. T's
Mrs. T's
triathlon.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just give you some perspective on how things have changed.
The pierogies.
I moved to Chicago in 1995 or 6, I can't remember. I think 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it was earlier, 93, 94. I don't know, somewhere in that time frame. I graduated in 92, 93. I must have moved in 93 or 94. And at that time, I was running, but not a lot because I was doing triathlon.
Sure.
And I was running on the lakefront path one day.
Yeah.
And it was lunchtime, and I just happened to bump into some random guy, and we were running the same pace, and we just got to chatting. And he said to me, "Oh, are you running the marathon?" I said, "What marathon?" And this is like early September. And I'm like, "What marathon?" He's like, "Oh, we have this marathon. It's called the Chicago Marathon. You should think about doing it." Now, at that time, my longest run had been 6 miles. And that day with that gentleman, I ran 10.
Okay.
And I could hardly move the next day.
Sure.
So the day after that, I ran another 10 miles. And I'm like, I'm totally can do a marathon. So I signed up for the Chicago Marathon. Now, can you imagine in this day and age, I signed up for that marathon 4 weeks before the
4 weeks
marathon.
out, yeah.
Now you've got to sign up like 6 years in advance. And
exactly.
So it's just amazing, amazing how things change. So
you did it, and then you did it?
I did the marathon. Yes.
Oh my word. How'd that feel?
Well, I worked up to a long run of 13 miles.
Perfect. You ready?
So I was totally ready for 13 miles. Actually, it went remarkably well. Yeah. I did not really start feeling the pain until about mile 23, 24.
Nice.
Aside from this humongous blister I had on the bottom of my foot because it had snowed that morning.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's typical Chicago. But you never know what you're going to get that marathon. It could be 80 or it could be 20.
Oh, my word.
But fantastic. Man, I had a great time.
Do you want to share the time?
I think I ran just over 3:30.
See, look at that. I know, and it's like now you're kind of like at 3:30, but that's off of zero training, essentially, zero preparation, and then you go in there and chisel out a 3:30. I love that, and the folks want to know. Some folks want to know. We love the numbers around here. So, okay, now. But you're doing triathlon. You've done the marathon. You're in Chicago. You finish up school, but you're hooked on triathlon more than school, kind of. But your school's still your thing because I know you kept doing both.
I did both all the way through my academic life.
Yeah.
I did do my first half Ironman while I lived in Chicago.
Okay.
I did the Muncie Endurathon.
Oh yeah.
And that was miserable because it was hot, and I had a sinus infection from a race I had done the week before.
Yeah.
But I got through it, and I actually qualified for Kona. But I turned it down.
Okay.
2 reasons. 1, I was in school, and 2, I didn't know a lot about triathlon, but I knew I was not ready to go do an Ironman.
There you go.
It wasn't like just jumping into that marathon.
Yeah.
Ironman I knew was a whole different beast.
For sure.
And it was something I had wanted to do, but I knew that wasn't the time.
That wasn't it. Well, that's good. That's it's good that you listened to that intuition. That's cool. So now I'm guessing we're still in that zone of 95-ish, 94, 95, 96.
Yep. And then I moved to Baltimore.
Okay.
I think I must have moved to Baltimore in 95 to start my PhD program.
And that was Johns Hopkins. That was the call to Baltimore. It wasn't any other reason, or that was the program you needed?
That was the program I wanted. I went to the Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Yep.
I studied genetic epidemiology, which is looking at gene-environment interaction for complex diseases. So looking at things, my favorite example is lung cancer.
Okay.
Not everyone who smokes gets lung cancer.
Right.
They probably have protective genes.
Sure.
And not all people with lung cancer smoke. So they are probably predisposed genetically.
Interesting.
So that's sort of your gene-environment interaction. So if you have the right gene and you start smoking, you may be more susceptible to lung cancer than somebody else who is smoking but doesn't have that gene. We don't know the gene, but there is some genetic basis behind it.
I will say that, especially being as smart and accomplished as you are, this is a compliment. You brought that down so that we can understand it. Because I never really, you can search it, you can understand the words, but that's a really good way to describe what the area was. And you went deep. I mean, PhD, that was your jam for how many years is that program?
It took me about 4.5 years.
Right. So
I was actually working on my thesis while I was at the Olympics.
I remember. So this is when So this is and this is the fun. So this is, I always like to tell a little bit of how I got to know the person I'm chatting with. And so we have my wife, your friend and your training partner back then in the 90s in Baltimore is Amanda Gillum, right? And so she comes at me and she's like, wait till you meet this, like Joanna, she had all your stats. She was 10th when she was an amateur. She's already been top 10. She's studying for a PhD. You guys trained together. You had this whole crew. And
we did have a crew.
You had a great crew of girls out there training together in North Baltimore County. And it was really great. Troy Jacobson was coaching you guys all. And it was just like most of you, it was just a really neat little, to me, unknown triathlon hotbed.
It was great. We had a lot of fun times, both training and off training. We trained hard and we partied hard.
Yes, and there you go. And that was something I was sort of like, I didn't know you could do both. And so that was you were part of that intro. Greg Welch, of course, made famous doing both. But you were the one that said, "Oh, she's cool. She goes seriously hard, and then she has some fun as well." So that was when I met you, but it was neat. So talk us through this a little bit, because this is something that, again, forefront of triathlon history in this era. You were 99. You're vying for the slots. You're going for the Olympic slot, the first ever triathlon Olympics. Folks that don't follow this sport, because a lot of my audience doesn't really follow this, but triathlon was hitting the Olympics in Sydney in 2000, and you were one of quite a few top women from USA that were being considered for the job.
Well, I actually really wasn't being considered for the job.
Yeah, they weren't. True.
I came to the game a little late. I turned professional in '98.
Gotcha.
And you had to be pro to go to the Olympics in triathlon because you had to race a particular circuit to get the points. It's called International Triathlon Union, ITU.
Right. Yep.
Now it's called World Triathlon.
Got it.
And things have changed a lot since my day. But one thing that hasn't changed is that you have to have a ranking, a global ranking that's high enough to be able to even be allowed to participate in the Olympics. And because I was so new and coming in so late, I was unranked.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a mad dash to get my ranking high enough.
Yes.
And so I was traveling all over the place, which was difficult. I couldn't travel as much as most of my competitors because of my academic responsibilities. So I just knew that the races I went to, I had to make the most out of and do as well as I possibly could.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And
you did.
I did. We had a dedicated Olympic trials that went away a while ago.
Yes.
But in that year, we had there were 2 selection races. One was at a World Cup, which was the highest level of racing at that time. Now it's World Triathlon Series, World Championship Series race.
Yep.
But those were called World Cups then, and I hadn't even done a World Cup when I qualified for the Olympics. Yeah.
And then the other there was Dallas. There was Las
No,
Colinas,
I had done a World
right?
Cup.
One of them,
I remember what happened. I went to the World Championships in 1999.
Yeah.
And I had never done a World Cup. But the World Championships was my first real international race.
Yeah.
And I placed 15th there. And I remember the coach at the time pulled me aside and said, "You're going to make the Olympics." And I was shocked, but it did give me some confidence.
That's awesome.
And then in 2000, I went to San Diego to train because training in Baltimore in the winter totally sucks.
Right. Yeah.
And I did a couple of World Cups then and placed really well.
Okay. So you started, yes. Wow, that's good. Yeah, I remember that Montreal 99 and all the other, the Aussies, top 5 were all Australian women.
They were.
It was incredible. There was just a rush. That was a hard team to make. But so you got that exposure, really brilliant, and then the confidence from the coach. And then things went well. But you were still, I do say you were still the underdog. I remember being at the Olympic watch party and I was calling you out in my little group. I was like, she's going to be our top finisher. And everyone's like, nope, Taormina, this or that. And I said, nope. What was the other one? Gutierrez, right?
Gutierrez,
yeah. But anyway, tell us a little. Okay, so tell us about that. You made the Olympics, and you're still, because this is fun for everyone to hear. You made the Olympics, but you've been successful at Ironman, which was very rare in the late 90s, early 2000s. Extremely rare to do both at the same time, right? So you're going to the Olympics, and you're still going to Kona in 2000. Tell us about that a little bit. Get a little snapshot.
Yeah, that was kind of an unusual circumstance, but I loved long course. And since it was after the Olympics, I felt like, why not?
Sure.
So the way I did the training was I front loaded my Ironman training, if you will.
Okay.
So I ran the Olympic Trials Marathon in 2000 as well.
And that was in the spring?
That was in February. So,
yes,
so I was doing some long distance run training early on in the year to get ready for the marathon trials.
Okay.
And then I was putting in some longer bike rides early in the season. I did a half Ironman, and there wasn't a 70.3 every weekend like there is now.
Yes.
There were very, very few.
Very few.
And so the one that I did was in Lubbock, Texas.
There you go.
One of my favorite races.
Oh yeah, you and me both.
So I did that race, and then I really dedicated the rest of the summer to try and build that sprint speed that I don't have.
Yeah.
The sprint speed that's so bad that my coach said to me, if you're neck and neck with someone, start sprinting with a mile to go.
It's good advice. It's good advice.
Which actually came in handy at the 2001 World Championships.
In Edmonton.
Yes, because I was neck and neck with somebody. And I did not want to get fourth again because I'd been fourth at the Olympics. I'm like, I am going to get a medal this time.
Awesome.
And so I did start sprinting with a mile to go,
Yes.
and I did drop her.
Did get the medal.
And
I know.
did get the medal.
Bronze 01. Okay. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The long sprint. Okay. So, all right. So you front loaded, you got some long, and then you got the short. Went to the Olympics. I mean, this is fourth place. Like it's a hard, as you said, with the trials, when you get third, it hurts. Fourth hurts, or is that just? I mean, I don't know. Talk to us about just snagging that incredible performance, but still come up short of the medal.
At the time, everyone said to me, "Oh, you must be so disappointed. Fourth is the worst place to be." I'm probably the happiest fourth place person ever.
Good.
I was just so excited to be there.
Yeah.
I felt like I could not have done any better than I did. I got everything out of myself. There was nothing more I could do. And then it turns out that the woman who won gold got caught doping a couple years later. And everybody felt at the time she was doping, but at the 2000 Olympics, they did not test for EPO. The test had just come out, and they were unwilling to use it. I don't understand why they never went back and tested her sample after she tested positive.
Agreed.
That is my one bit of consternation over the whole thing, is that they didn't retest the sample when they retested so many others.
100%. It makes and especially because in that time that individual did have, well, nonetheless, we know she did fail the test 2 years later. And that is discouraging. And you watch that and you say, we have now the ability to go back, and they could come back and say, hey, by the way, you have bronze medal. In your heart, you were the cleanest athlete to go top four. So you're third. I mean, I think in your heart, but that's different.
It is. Validated. I mean, would having a bronze medal in my sock drawer change my life any? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
I mean, it would be a nice little trinket, but
you'd probably be. I would have asked you to wear it here for this.
Yeah. Well. I can make a pretend one. I've got my Olympic ring.
For sure. I mean, and so if you come back to it, like you said, and this is what I love. I remember you telling me that before, or hearing that via Amanda or someone, because you also started the sport, and you, like you said, you went to your first international race in 1999. And then you got to the Olympics. That alone is an incredible feat. And then you got fourth place. So all of that is an amazing victory just to have happened, right?
It was. And I got to carry the flag across the line.
That's so
and
cool.
I was super excited. And I remember running down, like there was one hill that you ran before you made the right turn to the finish line. So I could really see the competitors in front of me. Mm-hmm. And the woman who was in third, I thought she was like way up. I mean, I was running flat out. It's not like if she was 3 seconds in front of me, I could have I mean, she was...
Yeah.
But she looked like she was so far ahead. When I looked at the times, I think she was only about 15 seconds.
It's phenomenal.
But 15 seconds looks like a very, very long way when you're going as hard as you possibly can.
It does. Well, it actually, realistically, it's, 150 meters or something. It's a lot, it's a chunk of space. But I mean, okay, so then you dust everything off. You're in Sydney and you got to get to Hawaii. So you go to Hawaii, and the big focus, I think your passion at this point is really centering around Ironman and long distance. And you go off of a 6th place finish, and you deliver. You got a 5th. That's an incredible showing. You raced really well. Tell us about how that was to kind of bounce off the Olympics into long course.
It was so much harder than I ever expected.
Was it?
One of the main reasons being that I got sick in the village. Okay. I got a terrible sinus infection.
Oh, shame.
And I have asthma, and I ended up with a cough, and so I was pretty sick when I got to Kona. I went straight from Sydney to Kona so I could train and get acclimated to the heat and train on the course. And I remember when I got there, the first day, I was like, okay, I'm going to ride the course today.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so disastrous.
Yeah.
I got to about mile 80 where the scenic overlook is in Kona.
Yeah.
I literally crawled off my bike and I lay down on the pavement because I could not move. The pavement's like 1,000 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm just lying there, and I started to cry. I was like really sick, and I'm like, I'm so out of shape. I'm like, this was the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah.
But then I started feeling better, and I think I did the course one more time, and I think I did maybe one long run.
Okay.
Did a couple track workouts and called it good.
And then boom. That's awesome. I mean, you know what? I knew this was how we would chat, is like so much good Well, stuff I didn't know. And then also just sharing the underbelly. You know what I mean? Because I think when I give the intro and you look at the highlight reel, it's just like, oh, fourth in Olympics, fifth in this, sixth in that, the winner here. And you have had your fair share of underbelly, of bad sort of, heartache and difficulties. And so it's nice that you're, vulnerable enough to share it and paint those pictures.
Well, you cannot have ups without downs.
There you go. 100%. And I'm going to go to one of your talks one day. But let's get to that. With that in mind, you said you do some talks. Sometimes you show that picture of you as a little tadpole back in San Diego. So let's kind of bring it forward, because I could probably spend another 30 minutes talking about triathlon. I love it. I know you love the history and the stories. But let's do this. You said 2003 you moved here. I remember you came out, you and Amanda were still good friends, and we knew each other. We had moved out here a couple years before you came out. So I think you stayed with us. You said,
I did. I came out to train.
Right? Yeah, came out to train. He said, I'll give this place a whirl. So tell us about how you got to Boulder, why Boulder, and how that worked in those early days when you first moved here.
It was a little serendipitous. I had been out for a Saucony training camp.
Okay.
And did the Boulder Peak Triathlon.
Sure.
And then I came back out and stayed with you and Amanda and trained for a while.
Yeah.
And I was being coached by Dave Scott, the legendary Dave Scott, who lives here in Boulder. So even after I came out to train, I had no indication that I was going to move here.
Sure.
And then over the summer, a couple of things happened. One is my husband, Mark, went to the funeral of a good friend, and this person was young, and he was very unhappy with his job, and from the moment I met him, he was always talking about moving out of Baltimore. And he came home from the funeral and he said, let's move to Boulder.
No way.
He had never even been here.
No way.
But he was really ready for a change.
Yeah.
And they were selling our condo, so we had to move no matter what.
Yeah.
And the decision was, let's just move out of state.
Do it.
And so I was racing a lot, and he was traveling a lot for work.
Yeah.
My awesome parents came out here and found us a place to live.
Yeah.
And we just literally moved out here.
Yep. Yes. I know, on Calmia.
On Calmia.
I remember the townhouses over there.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Wow. I didn't know that. So what a cool... That really is one of those things where, so many people come away from funerals and they say, well, we should really make a change. And then a week later, you're like back to the same. I love that. So, and you knew Boulder, you knew your coach was here, the training was good. Is that kind of what drew you then, why he said that and why you guys felt like this was the jam?
I think so. We both wanted a different lifestyle. Mm-hmm. The East Coast lifestyle is very different, although Boulder is changing more to East Coast than I would like.
A little bit.
But we were just looking for something new, and Boulder seemed like a great place to go. And if we didn't like it, we could always leave.
Go elsewhere.
We weren't, like hammering ourselves into the ground where we couldn't leave if that was something we wanted to do.
Perfect. And was San Diego ever on the radar when he said, let's move to Boulder? Did you say, how about, or no?
Not at that time,
Cool.
but it's always on my radar.
Still, yeah, I know. It has to be. It was, it's a good blip on the radar. It's a good spot. So, okay. Now, 2003, fall-ish, you roll into town. Just walk us through that. Did you guys just road trip it out here with, all the belongings, or did you fly, or did he drive? You flew? Did you roll in? Do you remember?
We did not drive.
Okay.
I flew here.
Okay.
I was having some issues. As I mentioned earlier, I have I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast, but I have this condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
You did mention it. Yes. Yeah.
So it affects your joints a lot.
Yeah.
My SI joints were heavily affected by the hypermobility.
For sure.
And so at that time I was injured.
Yeah.
And so I came out early with my mom
Okay.
to see a specialist here.
Okay.
And he flew out with our stuff, and
Gotcha.
and then a moving truck came with all of our
Perfect.
belongings, and the car came on a truck.
Okay. So you're here, and then I know where you were living, sort of off 28th and Calmia, good little spot there. You roll right into living here. What was your first impression as a Boulder resident? Because it is different than the training camp and the visit, I think. But did you find that first impression, that first 6 to 12 months, what did it feel like? What was it like?
I loved it.
Okay, I love that.
It was a great change in everything, a good change in scenery.
Yeah.
The East Coast attitude is very different than what the Boulder ethos was at the time.
Sure.
It's changed over the years, as every place has. I love the mountains.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest things, the sun.
The sunshine.
There was no sun in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I would get seasonal affective disorder.
Okay.
And so much less here because the sky is blue. And the joke around here is like, if you don't see the sun for 2 days, everyone starts walking around all mopey.
And it's true.
Because we are just not used to not seeing the sun.
Guilty. Yeah, guilty. You get half a day and you're like, I can't believe it's so gloomy.
I'm like, I can't go outside. The sun's not out.
No, it's terrible. It's good, but it's terrible. Okay, so nice. So you loved it. You were just right in the rhythm, and you start, training. You fall into sync, and you're loving it. Yeah.
I joined Flatirons Athletic Club where Dave was coaching
Yes.
and I also started working at CU Boulder at the Institute for Behavioral Genetics.
Okay.
And I was very interesting how things come around. But I worked there for 8 years looking at drug use and abuse in young adults and adolescents.
Okay.
And one of the drugs that I studied was marijuana.
Is that right?
And I am now a cannabis epidemiologist. I do cannabis research. So I've had 2 lives of cannabis research.
Okay. The first being more recreational use or
inappropriate use.
Inappropriate use.
You don't want it used in kids. And
and
I always like to joke that when you're looking at the negative side of you call it marijuana research, and when you're unbiased and neutral, it's cannabis research.
There you go.
So I did marijuana use research for 8 years, and now I do cannabis research.
There you go. I know. Fair enough. Well, it's funny.
And getting into psychedelics as well.
And psychedelics. Now the research you are now researching. Okay.
We're doing I have a couple of research things that I do, but we do clinical trials as well. And we're going to start doing plant-based medicines. Okay. And psychedelics and cannabis are our 2 kind of big ones that we're.
Yeah. Well, let's go. Let's dive into that because we don't have to go chronologically, and I think that ultimately I want to know kind of what's going on the daily now for you. So this is what you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about like how you got into it, what you do on the day-to-day basis, and kind of what brought you there.
Well, every athlete has a shelf life, and my shelf life is over.
Okay.
I had a horrendous bike accident in 2009 when I was defending my world championship title. Yep. And that essentially ended my triathlon career. I tried for 1 more year to race, but I couldn't. I decimated my rib cage. Yeah. And I also have a lot of underlying health conditions that had gotten worse over time. They afflicted me during my whole racing and training. I used to pass out at every race, or I was dizzy. I was known for dropping out of races and passing out. People thought I was a head case, but it turns out I have a condition called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And that's where either your heart rate goes way too high and you get dizzy, or your blood pressure drops too fast and you get really dizzy. Yeah. Some people faint. Some don't. I'm a fainter.
What? Tell me the O is? Is it?
Orthostatic.
Orthostatic.
So it's a form of what's called dysautonomia.
Right.
And mine has gotten so bad that I now have a service dog to alert me to impending syncope events. Syncope is passing out. So I had this the whole time I was racing. Which is why I took, everyone made fun of me for the amount of salt I was taking. I was like, I think it's maintaining my blood pressure. And I'd always get to the same point of a race. Yeah. It was always around 3.5, 4 hours. Yeah. So like an Ironman, I'd get to mile 70, 80, and my stomach would blow up, and I'd get dizzy, and I'd be dizzy the rest of the race.
So it was this condition?
It was this condition.
Dang.
And I raced my whole career with it. And so some days, if it was just too hot, I just couldn't manage. I just lose too much salt, and I'd just get too dizzy. And I remember the last Ironman I did, Ironman Arizona. Yeah. And I had a 15-minute lead, and I still couldn't pull it off. I sat on a ledge, unable to move. I was so dizzy, I couldn't even see anything. All I could see was white light.
Brutal. Isn't it fascinating, though, that now I wonder what would have changed had you known, possessed the diagnosis now that you have now then? Does it enable you to do something different, or is it something that you were going to run into that no matter what you did?
I don't know if there's much I could have done differently because, you were
doing everything right.
I was doing the things I was supposed to do. I wish Martin gels were around back then because my stomach is so sensitive and almost everything I put in it either would make me throw up or blow me up. Yes. But I also am gluten intolerant, and I wish I'd known that back then. Yes. So my nutrition was very difficult when I was training and racing, and I'd gone to the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. I went to see everybody.
Sure, I remember.
But the problem is I have underlying conditions that afflict my gut that were not going to be fixable.
It's not trainable, it's not adjustable, it's there, it's the condition.
And it's still there, and it's still, my stomach is still horrible. And
okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah, that was.
And I'll just kind of assume that you're saying like throughout some of these moments. Now is that what's driven you to do what you do now? Because you said you started with the shelf life. So we're saying, what are you doing now? You're not out running, you're not training for marathons, but you're still active. You're still working in this field. Tell us a little about where you were going with that.
Well, I think that once you're an athlete, your head always thinks you're an athlete.
Yes.
Even if you're an athlete with a disability.
Yes.
And I'm actually going to be soon rectifying the fact that athletes with disabilities, whether they're seen or unseen, I have what's called invisible illnesses, because when you look at me, I look fine.
Right.
But inside, I am a mess. I call myself the junk drawer, because I look fine on the outside, but if you were to open me up, it'd be a complete scattered mess.
Yeah.
And I've got a 6-pack of health problems, but I like to be active.
Yeah.
And it's very hard in my situation. I can't go out and train with, people like I used to, because I never know what's going to happen on a daily basis.
Sure.
So that's been a very, very hard transition.
It's got to be hard. Absolutely.
You lose your community, you lose your identity, and it's very lonely.
100%.
So those are some things I'm trying to rectify with some programs.
Okay. You're trying to create the programs. Be there for people that
I'm trying to create a community for people like myself that need the athlete community in a different way.
Yeah. Let us know how we can help. That's something that I think that we don't, it's like there's a whole host of problems that we're all going to face in all areas of life, but we don't ever think or plan ahead for them. And then when you're there, you're like, oh, I should do something about this. And we're so tied into athlete friendships and community, and it is a part of our sphere, all of us, right? Like you said. So I'd like to help. If there's something, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, I will let you know. We're formulating the details, but I think the athletes they want to work out in whatever capacity that is, and I'm still getting used to this body that I'm in. That's not, it still doesn't feel like me.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the best that I can with it. I'm exercising the best I can with it. But it's difficult, and most of it I have to do alone or with my doggies.
Yeah.
So I want to make it easier for other people who are facing the same predicament of, I want to be an athlete, but I've got either a physical problem, I've got a mental health issue, or whatever it may be.
I think that's fantastic, and I really mean it. I think just even sharing the word or spreading or knowing the resource, because to me that's something I'm passionate about, is helping people, and that translates to a million different things, but just being able to know that resource is there, I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
So,
and that is what got me back into my second life of cannabis.
Okay.
I'm a medical cannabis user.
Okay.
And there was so much stigma around cannabis.
Yeah.
At the time I started using it, it never occurred to me that there are actual medical properties to it.
Right.
But I became very desperate.
Okay.
I couldn't sleep. I was in pain.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat. I had nausea.
Yeah.
And when it became legal here, even though I'd qualified, and I have severe neuropathic pain, so I'm like in pain every day, all day. And even though I had a qualifying condition to get a medical card, I was too embarrassed.
Okay.
When it became legal here recreationally, and the dispensaries opened in 2014, I marched into the dispensary and I'm like, these are my problems. What do you have for me? And they gave me some stuff, and they didn't tell me how to use it. I got way, way, way too high.
Okay.
But I slept.
Yeah.
And that was a goal. And as a researcher, I'm not deterred by these things.
Sure.
I was like, I was too high. I didn't like it. I just have to figure out the right dose for myself.
Okay.
And 10 years later, I'm still trying to figure out the right dosages for myself.
Is that right?
Because it's always evolving as your conditions change, as different products come out.
Makes sense.
And more research comes out into different cannabinoids besides THC and CBD.
Yeah.
But that is what brought me back into doing cannabis research, is because I have suffered so much.
Yeah.
And if I can ease the suffering of just one person,
you will.
Then I feel like I've done something.
Of course. Well, and where does that take place? That's here in Boulder.
I am based in Boulder, but most of what I do, I collaborate with people all over the world.
Fantastic.
The one good thing that came out of COVID was Zoom, because it makes it so much easier to collaborate with people who are very far away from you.
For sure. No, it's fantastic. I know, it's fantastic. And yet, it's funny, stubbornly, I still love in person, but it's amazing to have, because in person is not practical around the world. And, it take us forever. Like, we got together here. That's a highlight for me, but everything can be done so
virtually,
broadly, which is incredible.
Which is great. I mean, I was on a Zoom yesterday. I'm on a planning committee for a conference, a cannabis conference, and this is my 5th year.
Yeah.
And we've got people on this committee that are all over the United States.
Gotcha.
And so we all get together on Zoom, and it's just an amazing thing that we can do that.
It's remarkable. And again, you're totally right, because the technology was there before. There was Zoom before COVID, but COVID made it better, made it accessible, made it, normal. So Very cool. Okay. And now, since we're here in Boulder, I want to go right to the heart of things. Let's talk about, that's what you're doing a little bit now. And I think I'd love to kind of just hear a little bit more about how you interact with Boulder County, Boulder Town on a daily basis. And so, yeah, let's just talk about that for a sec.
It's so interesting we were talking about this, and I was thinking about Boulder and my relationship to Boulder. It's really changed.
Yeah.
When I was racing, I was really, all over the place. I mean, I would ride from Boulder to Fort Collins, and I rode up into the mountains, and I would just go everywhere.
Yeah.
And really loved it. The running routes, the biking. Now there's too much traffic, but I don't bike anymore. I can't. My biking is relegated to the Peloton.
Sure.
So my relationship is very different. It's hard being an athlete, non-athlete in Boulder.
Right.
Especially when you see everybody doing the things that you want to do.
Yes.
And so I really either have to put my blinders on or just really not be upset by the fact that I can't do the things I want to do.
Right.
I don't swim anymore. I miss that community.
Yeah.
I don't ride my bike. I miss the awesome places I would go.
Yes.
I can barely run.
Yes.
I call it runking because I run walk, so I runk.
Right. It's better than walking.
And I do a lot of that in hiking. There are some amazing trails here, and the beauty is still here.
It's still here,
which I still love.
Yeah.
When we had the snow the last few weeks, I was able to strap on my snowshoes and go for a snowshoe right here in Boulder because we had enough snow, and it was beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that is that's legitimately a daily struggle of just seeing of a part of you and the people that you're still friends with and that and you act with and you watch that they're still doing it and you're just not. And I appreciate you sharing that. If you're out hiking, you live nearby, what's some of your favorite walks? Dog walk, hike, where do you go out? Where do you like to enjoy nature here?
I really like going to the Annie White Trail in the summertime because there's a lot of shade and it's very pretty and there's a water source for the dogs.
Yeah.
I like going, any of the trails around Mesa Trail.
Yes.
I don't like to start at Chautauqua. It's too crowded. So I'll generally drive south and go somewhere out there.
Okay.
There's Dowdy Draw. There's Marshall Mesa.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a million. I like even the Niwot, the Niwot Loop, which is not like a trail, but it's what they did. One thing that Boulder has done that's amazing.
Yeah.
We have so many bike paths, and they will come and shovel those before the roads.
Yeah,
so you could literally do a 20-mile run on the bike paths and never go across a road.
No, that's true.
Or you could go do it on a trail. There's so many trails.
Yeah.
Or you can drive a short distance and find more trails.
Yeah.
Walker Ranch is amazing.
Okay.
El Dorado Canyon. There are just so many beautiful places to go, and you just wouldn't know that Boulder's becoming a bigger city. Denver's not that far away. That's a huge metropolis.
Yeah.
Yet you can find your serenity.
Your serenity. Well said. And you know what? It's so cool to hear all those names. Are you out doing that? Is that kind of what you'll try and make it a habit to be on one of those trails or spots or?
I do, and also up at Brainerd Lake or Boys Camp or Pleasant Valley.
For sure.
So I do either hiking or in the winter snowshoeing on a lot of these trails.
Perfect. Okay, I love that. And that's good. And Annie White, the one you led with, I think for folks, if you're trying to figure that one out, it's just up.
No, don't tell them where it is.
You just have to Google it, and then
good luck finding it. So it's a little hidden.
It's a little hidden. It is hidden. We've heard a couple people mention that, and I think it's real kid friendly. It's dog friendly. It's shade friendly, like you said, and it's a nice little spot. I love that you called that out.
You're right. It's very kid friendly. I always see kids there. Yeah. It's not a super challenging trail. It's not that long.
Yeah.
The only time it can be challenging is when you have snow melt and the creek is rushing and it's hard to get across some of the crossings.
Sure.
But it is truly just, and that trail was ruined in the floods. And they rebuilt that entire trail.
Yes.
And I'm so glad they did.
I know, another nice, so many nice improvements after that 2013. So, okay, very cool. And I don't know, you and I, we bump into each other occasionally here and there. And one of the things I always enjoy, if the topic of tacos come up and you come from San Diego, like the birthplace of Rubio's, right? And
God, I love Rubio's.
Right.
Although my favorite was Roberto's, which was like a little shack hut.
Okay.
And we loved Roberto's. Yeah. There was like Roberto's, Alberto's, Gilberto's.
All the Berts.
Yes. I mean, and you'd have food trucks weren't a thing back then.
Right.
But you'd have like these little shacky huts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had the best tacos. Just a
Okay.
good old plain street taco.
Okay. And so, I mean, with that preface, like you know tacos. In case you're wondering, it's not a PhD in tacos, but it's damn close. And so if you're going out for tacos, or if you want to meet up, if we're going to grab a taco, where would you tell people that you should go? What's your favorite? You could give us more than one. Where do you like to go, or where should we avoid?
I love Teocalli's. It's
Okay.
not in Boulder,
Yeah.
but they have one in Lafayette and one in Longmont.
Yeah.
Their tacos are really good, and it's all gluten-free.
There you go.
But I don't like fussy tacos.
Okay.
And if the taco has too much in it that you have to double it up, then you've put too much in it.
Okay. Yeah.
And the tortilla consistency has to be
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
So Teocalli? Okay.
You know, some people are like,
Yeah.
they know their wines. I know nothing about wine because I'm not a drinker.
Yep.
But I know all about tacos.
Okay. Okay.
Totally useless skill on my resume.
Yes. Okay. So Teocalli comes up top. I like that. Lafayette right there on South Public, and the Longmont one. And then what? I heard recently they're going to do a new one. But what else? Where's another spot that you can't live without?
That I can't live without. Basaba Thai food.
Okay. Where's this?
They have a couple of locations.
Yeah.
I used to really be a big fan of Aloy Thai, but I feel like their quality's gone down a little bit.
Okay.
And we still go there, but Basaba, great,
the one?
great Thai food.
Okay, super duper. And are you guys, if you're, okay, so your husband, Mark, we've known him a long time as well. You mentioned he's sort of the real driver, the real impetus for moving to Boulder came from him. You guys go out for a date night. You guys go out for a date night. Where would it be? Do you guys ever get out, like a restaurant you're loving, or where you have on your radar, something that we should hear about?
We love comedy shows.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, last week we saw Jim Jeffries.
Okay.
And
where was that?
That was at the Paramount Theater in Denver.
So you went down to Denver, yes.
Yeah, so
nice. I love that. Yeah.
we go to as much comedy as we can.
you.
I've
Okay.
seen all of the great comedians, and we've got
Okay.
a few shows coming up.
Okay.
We're going to see Joe Coy.
Nice.
And Nate Bargatze,
Okay.
and I think we have one more. I've seen Chelsea Handler,
So
John Mulaney
funny.
at
Oh,
Red
man.
Rocks.
Yes.
We love comedy.
Oh, good for you.
I mean, we even go to the Dairy Center to watch some
Yes.
amateur comedy,
Amateur.
and we've been down to the Comedy Cellar or whatever it's called down in Denver.
Yes.
We chase it.
That's it. You know who else said this was Larry Frieder. He mentioned comedy, and it's not. He didn't mention some of those spots. So
Nikki Glazer. We even saw Nikki Glazer.
Amazing.
She played at the Boulder Theater over the summer.
Oh wow.
She's coming
Cool.
back now, playing a
Very
much
cool.
bigger arena.
Yes.
Now that she's hit it big. But
How cool.
she was hilarious.
I love that. We'll
Very
have to look
dirty,
that up.
but very funny.
Well, you said
My-
Chelsea Handler. She's one of my favorite. Like completely inappropriate.
Oh,
and-
Nikki Glazer
or even
takes it to a
another
whole new level.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I'll have to put that down. So, and I didn't know that about the Dairy Arts. That's good. You can pop in there and just catch some.
They have
some
all
open
kinds of offerings. They
fun,
do
yeah.
movies, they do shows,
Yeah.
they have comedies.
Neat spot too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's local. Please go support the Dairy Art Center
Yes.
because they have great exhibits.
Yeah.
And they have great shows.
Yes, good tip. I love that. And this is again what it's all about, is sharing those tips. So, all right, now let's not dance around a little bit more this too much. You had said, and you mentioned a second ago, like what would be some of the drawbacks? It could be changes you've seen since you moved here, or some things just the heads up, or this is a bummer about Boulder, or I wish we didn't. Anything like that just comes to mind that you'd share with the listeners?
There are a few things. Number one, the homeless problem has become really terrible, and there are, I guess, unhoused. And there are two different communities here of
Right.
people who are unhoused.
Right.
You have the people that are on the street. A lot of them are using drugs. A lot of them are stealing. A lot of them have mental health problems that are unresolved, and but it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of them are hanging out by the high school,
Right.
and there's drug paraphernalia and feces and other kinds of things right by the creek,
Right.
and also by the high school,
Yeah.
and that's a little frightening. They've
Yes.
actually had to close the library and some other public bathrooms to
Yes.
do meth mitigation.
Yes.
All
Not good.
problematic.
All
And so
problematic.
crime has also gone up.
Yes.
That's not a good thing.
That's not.
But then we also have the unhoused who frequent the Boulder shelter.
Sure.
That I actually volunteered there last night.
Okay.
And so I try and do what I can to help people in need in that way.
I love that.
But we need a solution, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Because it's just getting worse, and it's very sad to see.
It is.
The other thing that I don't like about Boulder is the amount of building that they're doing.
Okay, tell me more.
They're just building on every speck of land. They're selling things off and building.
Yeah.
I understand the need for affordable housing, but a lot of this does not even qualify as affordable housing.
Right.
And it's ugly.
Yeah.
And they are loosening some of the height restrictions, which were put in place so that people could always have a view of the Flatirons.
Sure. Yeah.
And we have a lot of empty buildings. And
We do.
I guess it's easier to build something new than to knock something down and rebuild.
Right.
But
right.
we're going to have this weird aesthetic of all of these new condos with all these dilapidated, old, empty whatevers,
Sure.
Businesses or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not opposed to growth. It's inevitable.
Right.
I'm not happy with how it's being done.
How it's done.
And I think a lot of Boulderites feel the same way.
Right, 100%. I mean, it is. That's another tricky one that needs a solution to be presented, a good one, because you see so much mixed use that's in all, and in a lot of mixed use is what's sitting empty. So you build a commercial downstairs that's not even being, entertained, and then upstairs you're renting apartments or selling apartments or condos. And I think there is something there where we need to figure out what is the way to make housing for people so they can afford it and be here. And
they haven't figured it out. And now one of the things that they're doing is allowing condos to go up without parking.
Right. Because they're trying to,
because they want to put more space. They want to be able to come closer to the street and be able to get more into that space with the notion that people are going to take public transportation or ride their bikes.
Right.
We live in a very cold area.
Yeah, we do.
It's not always possible to ride your bike.
Know.
I can't ride my bike. I couldn't. If I had to commute, I work at home.
Yeah.
But if I had to commute, I can't commute on a bike.
I know. It is.
And our bus system is not really that great.
Yeah, we need to bump up the caliber of the public transport and make it more attractive, because I think you're right. And you see that. You say, well, take away the parking doesn't really take away the cars. It's people like their cars as well. And so even a town like Boulder, I think that there's a lot of room. Okay, those are legitimate concerns, two big ones that need some heads working hard to come up with solutions around.
People smarter than I am. That's
me too.
I can identify the problem. This is not one I know how to fix.
Yes, I know. And hopefully there are passionate people that are smart and working on that right now. So outside of that, I mean, overall, you've seen the changes. You said it really well. Like, growth is important. It's part of it. You support that. It's going to happen. It's a great spot. Are there trends generally? Do you feel like you've seen improvements here since you've moved, or is it more kind of equal or a downturn?
They've built more and more paths and underpasses.
Yes.
They've made it much safer for pedestrians.
For sure.
Well, until the e-bikes came along, and people are riding around like maniacs on the path, which I could go on a diatribe, but I'm not. No, there's a lot to like about Boulder. I love the mountains, and it's still, compared to other places, even though it's grown a lot, it's still easy to get around.
It's still a pretty small place.
But I will say, as someone with multiple health issues, disabilities, it's a hard place to be.
Okay.
It's very isolating and sequestering.
Sure.
And so many of the people that I was friendly with, I no longer see. I mean, I think COVID changed that, but so have my illnesses.
Yes.
I'm not very reliable.
Yes.
Sometimes I just cannot go do things.
Yes.
And that's been, I think, the hardest part is trying to find community where there isn't one, which is why I'm building this community.
Yes.
So I think, being a person who's limited in what they can do, this is not, but maybe that's true if I was anywhere.
Yeah, fair. Okay. No, that's fair. I mean, I think I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that it is, we see this a lot and I've spoken to others, just off the mic, where when you leave a community by choice or not, meaning if you're an athlete by trade every single day, a triathlete, we'll say an endurance athlete, you realize pretty quickly when you leave that world that maybe the connections you had with people weren't really they weren't deeper connections. You were training partners, or you were above training partners, but you don't have that common connection anymore to really have the excuse to get together, right?
Right.
And I think that's really hard. And I see that throughout a few different areas. We intermingle now with a lot of different types, and you see people that say that, be it aging out, kids moving on, athlete career ending, all the stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to adapt. And
Socially,
you've got to
yeah.
have good coping skills to be
Good
able
skills.
to move to whatever is next.
Whatever's next. Well, I think it's always when I sit down, and I've talked to you already a few times off record about this, but let's figure out time to go get some tacos. I'm going to throw one thing out there at you, make sure you have it, and I know the text is going to be coming. We're going to sign off, but the two things, as I prep you, you're going to tell me I'm going to give you a second to think about it, your perfect day, and it could be any time of year. It could be with Lola and Diesel. It could be with Mark, none of the above, all of the above, whatever you want. You can create it. Just share it. Walk us through maybe a perfect day here in Boulder County. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you, in case you haven't been, have you ever been to Tacos I? Have we talked about this?
No.
Tacos I. So you're going to drive for this one. It's in Lafayette, but I'm going to put this out there for you. I think you'll really like it. It's a very authentic little dive kind of place.
Oh, my favorite.
In a strip mall, or not strip mall, behind a gas station. I mean, it's nothing to look at. But if you go out South Boulder Road into Lafayette and you've crossed 287, and no, you're past 95th before 287. Centaurus High School, if you're familiar with it, just drive right past Centaurus High School. Look for the gas station that's there on the right, and you pull in. You won't see signs for it, but it's called Tacos I. And I share it because my friend Ryan shared it with me, and it's one of my favorite places. Incredible. Just like you're going to go there and be like you're at one of the Bertos back in San Diego. So put that on your radar.
Wait.
Yeah, you got to try it. A week ago, but you can try that one out. I love sharing that. But that being said, what do you think? What does a perfect Joanna Zeiger day look like here in Boulder County?
Well, I am a very early riser.
Okay, talk to me.
So I'm up at 4.
I love it. 4, that's early.
And I like to do my puzzles. I do all the word games and crossword puzzles with my cup of coffee in the morning.
Okay.
That's my I have a hard time in the mornings because of my conditions. It takes me a little while to actually physically be able to move.
Okay.
So this is a good way for me to start.
Gotcha.
I do a meditation.
Oh, nice.
So I do a 10-minute meditation guided every single morning.
Okay.
Then take the dogs out for whatever. But the perfect day would be I'd have my 4 o'clock routine. Then we'd have a hike planned somewhere, or this would be in
Give us the hike.
This would be good weather.
Good weather.
I'm not really a winter girl.
Okay, give us the hike.
Too much California me.
Yes.
Well, there's a hike up near Estes. Mark has a friend with a trail right in her backyard.
Awesome.
I love that hike.
Okay.
The views are amazing.
Perfect.
So that could be a hike.
Okay.
But I also love going up off peak to peak. There are lots of great places there.
Super.
Golden Gate Canyon. I would take any of those.
Anything up in the mountains.
Any of those I would take. So
Perfect.
a nice 3 to 4 hour hike.
Beautiful.
And then come down.
Yeah.
Have a little rest, a shower, grab a quick dinner, and then go to a comedy show.
There you go. Would you grab dinner at home or out?
Probably out.
Out. Where are you going to eat?
Well, I'm going to go get some tacos or some Thai.
There you go. Tacos or Thai, and then out to a comedy show. Perfect. That's beautiful. Well, you've already given us the recommendations, so we can fill in the blanks there, and that's awesome. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I hope you get to do one of those soon. I know it's winter, but it feels spring-like out there. So super to catch up with you. I love that you shared the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
It's great. It's been awesome. And so I'll do this as we close out. I'll encourage everyone that's listening to go out and do something that you love.